Hello, this is the first video based on the Nina prophecies, which, according to Nina herself, are based on the visions which she received in year 1994, when she herself was 26 years old and not in any way different from any other absolutely atheistic young lady with a very average mindset. They were subsequently recorded and published in year 2004. They are incredibly precise and they have many details about things which are about to pass before the key events. So there will be plentiful opportunities to see, is she really a prophet and is it worth listening to her advice? According to her, the very same night she was given these visions, a man in America had the very same visions, and he will be also very actively alerting the people about what is to come. And eventually, right before the big war, they will kill him as he will become too uncomfortable revealing their plans to the public. So, according to her, the worst will start with violent natural disasters, mostly in the Western Hemisphere, of course resulting in crop failure. And that would be the background scene for the chapter of the worldwide civil wars. Now, her prophecies focus mainly on Russia, where she comes from, but they will be equally useful for all people from all countries because the scenario will be similar everywhere. Although the Russian Civil War will be exceptionally bloody and cruel, she also mentions that all the other civil wars will be centrally instigated in a very similar manner. So in terms of Russia specifically, she saw three possible karmic paths. The most unlikely, which even in year 2004 she said is almost only theoretical at this point, is that the people will come to their senses and turn to godly life. Obviously that's not happening, so we're gonna skip this scenario. The other possible scenario, which was less likely even back then, now it's out of question, would have been that Gorbachev, who at that time had recently betrayed his country and took a bribe to dismantle it, he would actually use his power. After that he could betray, as the communists did to some extent. He wouldn't follow completely this scenario his bosses were giving him, and he wouldn't ruin Russia to such an extent, which he did. He wouldn't encourage lawlessness and degradation of moral to the extent he was supposed to, he was paid to, and he did. Anyhow, this development she mentioned just so that she has something positive to say as an option. Even at that moment it wasn't very likely and it didn't happen, but in case it would have happened, they would have eventually murdered him, but still Russia would be far better off, not like now, where criminal gangs rule openly and poverty is widespread. And that's why it seems we took the most likely path, and by the way, that is the path described by all other prophets, the path of the terrible civil war and return of so-called communists. So they will start stirring intense chaos everywhere. They will announce absolute amnesty for all the most dangerous criminals who will be let loose and encouraged to follow their heart. They will make sure the store shelves are absolutely empty by the time they want to start the civil war. Nina saw an extremely sinister winter around those times. There was no snow on one hand, and yet the temperature would be -40. Crazy chaps will be vandalizing the crosses in cemeteries, churches, altars, anything they can find. Many icons in the churches will turn Myroblyte. The phenomena of the Myroblyte icons or statues of saints or incarnations of the Lord has already been observed since long time. It will just become much more common. Some penguins have tried to study the phenomena, and they stayed up all night and indeed found out that there are no priests with droppers who go to the images and imitate crying. It is indeed a fragrant oil which appears by itself from the eyes of the images. Of course, they have countless penguinian proposals that somehow the oils of the paint make such effect, which is of course possible. It simply doesn't explain why the fragrant oil, which is by the way of distinctly different scent for each icon, flows exactly from the eyes. And when most people are frightened and desperate enough, in August, when the current government will be on vacation, they will stage a coup. After which the chaos will only grow more, and already in November the same year, she sees gangs of seriously drunk men murdering people without trial in what they think is dispensing justice. Mostly their target will be politicians, there will be some scientists as well, but as well as ordinary people. For example, jealous neighbors would be directing the gangs of drunk criminals to the house of the person they envy, saying that yes, he deserves to be killed, go there. The booty in his house will be plentiful. They will declare all foreign currencies illegal on the territory of Russia, and since it is very popular even currently to be converted entirely to foreign currencies for not trusting the ruble, many people who are now rich will end up in poverty, and suicide by hanging will be very, very popular. Every day there will be a list of famous before people shown on TV after they committed suicide. This entire chaos and disaster will be like an initial reminder from Lord that you have forgotten to develop the magical abilities of your spirit for which you came on earth, and instead you made the bodily comforts sole focus. And now, while the worst has not yet begun, this should serve as a warning not only to the people who are obviously swallowed by absolute materialism, but also to those who consider themselves spiritual because now and then they do a meditation for abundance, while at the same time making no endeavor to develop the magical abilities of the inner self, which involves direct perception of the other dimensions. Around this point of time, Nina also sees around the country those huge 2 meters high bonfires. They are burning all religious, spiritual, and meaningful books. And then, after the undescribable horror of murders and all kinds of crimes, they will vote, and the voting will be fair, not like lately in America. They will actually go house to house, and 90% of the people will actually really vote for the return of the old communism when there was hardly any crime, there was order in the country, there was no starvation, people would get free vacations every year from the government and so many other perks. So they will vote for the communists without having the slightest clue that the so-called communists have nothing to do neither with communism as such nor with the previous communist government. And so everything will go as the devils planned it. Once they establish their new government, one of their first laws will be that for being religious, you are being sentenced for 10 years in labor camp. Although those those very same people, they were posing, pretending that they even go to church before they got elected. So this would be a major thing in a country where there are many, many religious people. Those who get arrested and sent to Siberia to cut wood, in the very first group, they will be relatively okay and they will not perish. Some will try to be cunning and they will pretend to betray others, pretending that they are not Christians. Eventually, they will be arrested themselves, all of them without an exception. However, those who go in the later groups, the traitors, those they will be in horrible conditions. Many will be raped and other extremely bad things. Not many will survive of them. And once this group of most religious people is taken to safety, actually in Siberia over there, the guards will be young people who will not take their job very seriously. They will think, because the arrested will be mostly elderly people, many of them will be women. So what kind of wood production can you expect from an old woman? So they will not expect from them anything. They will let them arrest and not really treat them as enemies of the state. So once that group is taken to safety, things will get much, much worse. Before this entire hell breaks loose in Russia and before they close the borders completely, some people will manage to flee to other countries, but their situation over there won't be much better because in the other countries it will be more or less the same. Plus, for a foreigner who doesn't know the local ways and probably even language, it will be way more difficult to hide. And overall, the foreign media will cover this extremely bloody civil war, which will take uncountable victims, and it will be part of their propaganda to portray the Russian people as wild, unpredictable and unreliable, and further widen this gap of hatred, which will serve very well for them when they want to ignite the big war after that. And then, as directed by the Central Devil's headquarters, they will blow up a few buildings and blame it on some sort of terrorists, and then declare absolute martial law to protect the people, of course. They will say, and then people will be required, at least in the big cities, to take up a special identification card with a chip. It will be impossible to move around in the city without such card. People are being checked every 15 minutes for their card by very angry policemen, and if they don't have it, they are taken for interrogation as suspects for terrorism. And nobody told them that there are these big dirigibles in the sky. Nina sees a couple of them hovering around Moscow, the size of 4 or 5 meters, with personnel inside. And besides tracking every movement, every breath personally for every card holder, this satellite connection with the chip and the setup with the dirigibles, it also acts as a artificial intelligence tailored and attached to each individual's psyche to manipulate it and make the person void of free will, independent thinking, exhausted mentally and physically, absolutely depressed, and having no hope for anything whatsoever. Without such a card, the residents of the cities are confined to their homes, and at that point it is only the people in the remote countryside who have some sort of freedom, at least in their own garden. Now, I would like to remind you that the book came out in year 2004, and that was way before And this type of intense training operations unfolded all around the world of blowing up things and blaming it on some other party. And the other development of confining the people under, for some reason, to their homes, that is extremely recent development. So I hope that you will make a copy of all the prophecies and all the videos in my EndTimes playlist, and check as the events come through, because later on, when your soul will be going through even more difficult exams, it will be the words of the prophets that will give you strength, and at that time they may not be available anymore. The trick with the card will be very effective, because people will take it eagerly. They will think, I'm not a criminal. I don't mind if they trace me, since I'm not doing anything bad anyway. They will not understand that the point lies somewhere else. And the people who at that time accept the card, later on they will accept the hot iron branding on their foreheads or hands. In addition to the restrictions of movement, every single room and premise will be monitored and recorded, and the people who dare to express some sort of judgment or not extremely positive rating for the current government, they will be simply eliminated within minutes with no trial. Now, as mentioned in the previous episode, recently I also read the book of Gottfried from Vanderberg, and he was precisely describing how does he get his visions. He was literally being transferred to those times, and he would collect the exact data, hearing how the people discuss the events in between themselves, and also watching the news or reading the newspapers of that time, while at the same time witnessing what can be visually perceived. And whenever applicable, he also saw himself participating in those future events. Now, Nina, she also described very well how her visions were given to her, and it was exactly what, as Gottfried described, plus one thing more. She had all the time the presence of this God figure, maybe we can call it like this, or the Holy Spirit, who was giving his own feed and comments on what was happening. So in this respect, she kind of channeled from a higher source, because also she had the opinion of the ultimate person who is responsible for all this, our creator. So in this case, when the people in mass voluntarily allowed to be put into this movie of the cards and practically turned themselves into remotely controlled zombies, the voice of God, so to say, said that this angers him greatly, because this is not what he planned for the human species. And the fact that the people en masse allowed their bodies to be used as zombies by the devils, this greatly disappointed him. Exactly as Edgar Cayce put it in words, that already at the time of Atlantis, they reached as far as trying to tamper with the paths of the souls as designed by the Lord. They started tampering with the very fabric of what the human species is all about. And even Edgar Cayce said at this point they really angered the creator of the world. And that's why also God is making sure that everybody has heard about the truth before they make their choice. Some people remained hesitant about the cards until the last moment. They were waiting to see what will happen to the people who take them. And when they saw what kind of a mental sickness devours the card holders, they saw the proof with their eyes that this is not something advantageous at all. But then it was too late. One could not leave the city without a card even for a moment. Some of them decided to escape, using the darkness of the night as cover, but that was extremely dangerous because, of course, a line of policemen would encircle every city all through the night, and whoever was caught roaming around was, of course, a terrorist. But still, some people took that risk, knowing that becoming a zombie is much worse. And Nina saw elderly people praying with such a sincerity that tears were dripping out of them as they were going in the dark. And indeed, the Holy Spirit helped them and distracted the guards with some passing by cats and dogs. By then, the natural course of nature, the seasons and the biospheres would be out of order. For example, winter will start very, very late, and then it will also end late, all the way into the summer almost. In one single day, it would be like minus 30, plus 30. And there will be snow and hail and rain and blizzard all in one day, and when it is over on the trees, it will be frightening to see how the leaves have turned black and are being tossed by the wild winds. By then, alternating droughts and severe floods will be causing crop failures worldwide. On the top of the civil war and the natural calamities, there will be nasty plagues and terrible fluctuations in the atmospheric pressure, which alone will be the reason for many people to depart. And with death collecting its rich harvest everywhere around, people will see the so-called alien ships as their saviors. Actually, even the children in ancient times knew that the evil spirits use this type of devices sometimes to appear and trick them. But since modern people don't care for the wisdom of their forefathers, but care only for what is implanted into their heads by Hollywood, when they see the holograms of the so-called alien ships, they will buy into the theater 100%. Moreover, that the ships, they will be like healing stations, and indeed people will get healed in exchange for signing a small formality contract for the sale of their own soul. And some of the clauses of this contract will be, of course, future suffering, many times worse than the sickness they are curing. But everything will look so Hollywoody that it will be just irresistible. The stations will be metal, kind of egg-shaped, and with 3 legs. I wonder where they get the idea of the design. So Nina did not specify if the image trickery will be done with earthly hologram technology or with hellish black magic, but obviously it doesn't even matter. Or it could be a mixture of both, or yet some other technology that we have not heard even of. But I know for sure that since couple of decades this has been one of the departments of their propaganda to implant this idea of aliens landing and tampering with our history, with our species. So it won't be a new idea at all. It is something that they have been grooming the people for since decades. Nina saw herself actively trying to warn the people in her area about this, and they were ridiculing her, calling her a mad woman who tries to prevent others from being healed. And amidst this entire unbelievable madness, first there will be 2 major earthquakes in the region of Japan, and then all of a sudden, early 4 a.m. in the morning, I guess Russian time, Japan will suddenly sink completely into the ocean. Nina watched the event kind of from above, and it appeared like a giant whirlpool in the water as the island disappeared. Much to the dismay of the Japanese people who were at that time abroad, they simply could not believe their eyes. So according to Nina, the sinking of Japan is one of the major signs to come before the Great War, and I'm trying to follow loosely the way she foretold the events one after another, but you can't really expect that they will happen in the same sequence as you hear them in this video, although loosely I could say that for now it's only events that are expected before the war. And by the way, I occasionally stumbled upon this picture of Japanese Ganesh, a wonderful addition to the Vedic roots of the Japanese religion material found in the Japanese episodes of The Survivors. Around that time, as the Earth's crust starts moving more and more, there will be lots of volcanic activity in Kamchatka, and many people will die in the lava. There are more than 300 volcanoes on the Kamchatka Peninsula, and dozens of them are still active. I will continue with the Nina prophecies in the next episode, but all of this is not to scare anybody, just on the opposite. In overall, the message of Nina is reassuring that those who do good will be never overcome by evil, and those who consent to evil will not be saved by any bunker or any trickery. You can download the original of the Russian book for free. There is a link in the description of this video, as well as the audio recording of the lady, of which the book is basically just a transcript. And by the way, Nina is a nickname coined by me. In the original, the prophecies are called Anonymous Prophecies by Lady N. So instead of saying 100 times the anonymous Lady N, I thought it would be more convenient to put some sort of nickname.